It is generally believed that Israel, the United States, others in the West, and of course Saudi Arabia, they would like to topple the current regime because Iran is funding a proxy war in Yemen against Saudi Arabia and a proxy war in Lebanon and Gaza against Israel. But the question is, what comes after this theocracy if it's toppled? Well, there is the possibility of more theocracy. The current Ayatollah's son is seen by some as his possible successor. But there is also the possibility that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard could assume more control, reversing the power dynamic where the clerics, for the first time, would only be nominally in charge, forced to answer to the military. The return of the Shah's son is also talked about in the West, especially among those who conveniently forgot that his father's oppressive pro-Western regime created the conditions for the 1979 revolution, and we helped. We trained Savak. Thank you, Norman Schwarzkopf. Well, that was his father. Was it Norman Schwarzkopf's father? I think Norman Schwarzkopf's father trained Savak. I'm not sure. It's either, I'm pretty sure it was Schwarzkopf's. I just wanted to lose the entire audience on that. Schwarzkopf led our troops into Iraq during the first Gulf War. There are reports of protesters inside Iran now chanting, "Long live the Shah." Apparently, America isn't the only country with amnesia. The Washington Post reporting chants also include, "This is the last battle, Pahlavi will return." Pahlavi being the Shah's family name. The Post also reporting protesters can be heard chanting, "Reza Shah, God bless your soul." That would be the son. The Post profiled Reza, the Shah's 65-year-old son, who lives in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., in what the Post describes as a mansion, but not quite a palace. His father, the Shah, died in 1980, by then in exile, and it is generally believed the family squirreled away billions, most of which was confiscated by Iran's current government, but the Pahlavi family supposedly still kept plenty for themselves, enough so the Shah's son doesn't have to work. He's in his mid-60s, and he has spent his adult life, he tells the Washington Post, fighting for his return to what was once called the peacock throne. I'd like that job. How come I don't get that? How come I have to work? He told the Post he will move back to Iran, quote, "at the first possible opportunity. My job," he said, "is to lead this transition, to make sure that no stone is left unturned, that in full transparency, people have an opportunity to elect their leaders freely and to decide their own future." Just like it was with his dad. So what comes next? The Shah's son? New clerics? A more potent Revolutionary Guard? Those are three possibilities. The fourth is nothing happens. The current theocracy stays there. There are also Iranians in exile besides the Shah's son, and they would like a shot coming back and assuming power. Problem is, they've been absent, just like the Shah's son, for more than 40 years, and will most likely be seen by too many Iranian people as out-of-touch interlopers who are puppets of the West. I don't see how the Shah's son returns. The current Ayatollah is 86 years old, and as I said, things look like they're changing, but they might not. There are moderates inside this current government hoping they can ride out this storm like they did in 2022, when confronted by the massive women life freedom protests, which lasted more than 3 months. They were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini after she died in police custody while being held for violating the nation's dress code for women. Those protests saw more than 500 demonstrators killed and nearly 20,000 detained. The average age of those arrested was reportedly 15 years old. So 2022, the Women Life Freedom protests. A lot of people thought, oh, things are changing in Iran. They didn't. And up until this morning, we were not completely sure if the current protests had risen to the level of violence or are becoming as big a threat to the government as the Women Life Freedom protests in 2022. But, and this is why I'm spending so much time on this, as I mentioned earlier, Time magazine reporting the death toll may already be in the thousands. Some academics are putting it at 6,000. So in 2022, 500 protesters were killed, and they didn't bring in the army. They now have the conventional army restoring order. This is a crisis unlike anything the current government has had to face. Now, these protests can get much bigger because this is now the most vulnerable the Iranian government has been in 40 years. Israel killed the country's top generals and scientists last year, and that American-Israeli joint bombing campaign in June shattered Iran's image as a military power in the region. Although Hezbollah won't put down its weapons in Lebanon, and the Houthis are still firing from Yemen missiles into the Red Sea and Israel. So, what comes next? The fear is palpable, not just inside Iran, but for the West. As George W. Bush learned after illegally invading Iraq, just because a country's leadership is despotic and deadly, the world may be better off with that than the alternative. Better the devil you know, as we learned in Iraq. Better the devil you know. Moderates inside the current Iranian government are banking on the West and the protesters deciding better the devil we know. So moderates believe right now, moderates inside Iran believe they can ride this out the way they did in 2022. And over time, with the Ayatollah aging out, they might be able to bend a little towards modernization. This is a situation that is, I don't know how this plays out. But here's a novel idea that somebody should tell Donald Trump. Instead of invading oil-rich countries, why don't we work on getting rid of fossil fuels? That might be the best investment we can make.